going to be talking about a young player from Brazil who has had some journey to get where he is today already. And he's only 18 years old and playing for Real Madrid and his country of Brazil. But not only is he being tipped to go on to be one of the greats and being compared to Pele, but he has big dreams of changing the world in a positive way. Of course, in this episode, we are going to be speaking about no other than Endrick. Before we get into this episode on Endrick, we have a new club captain on Patreon, and that club captain is James, who is 6 years old and is a fourth generation Manchester United fan, and he absolutely adores Garnacho. He loves going to watch United, both at Old Trafford and the women's team with his nanny. James would love a shout out to his football buddies at Plays Hartford and all of his friends at Whitley Village School. So James, a club captain, this is a huge shout out to you and every single person that you play football with. Thank you for being such a loyal supporter of the podcast and helping me to keep it going and flowing. And I hope you've had a chance to listen to that episode I did on Garnacho a little while ago. Right then, let's get into it, shall we? On Endrick. So, for the first time ever, we aren't actually going to start with the player's birthday and the location which they were born, because this story begins well before Endrick was even born himself. Endrick's father, Douglas, grew up in Brasilia, which is the capital of Brazil. Where he grew up, it was a seriously tough area, full of crime, aggression, and really bad poverty. Very few people had any money at all. Every day was a genuine struggle, and his mother was a single parent, and Endrick's father, Douglas, had to go to an orphanage. A scary and tough time for him and for his siblings. Douglas, Endrick's father, grew up to become a tough and resilient man. He didn't have a choice. There was only one way that his life was going to be changing, and that would be off the back of his hard work and his actions. He played for a range of teams in Brazil at a low level, but he just wasn't good enough to make a career out of it. His life was extremely tough, and it seemed everywhere he turned there was an obstacle in his way. At one point, he left his home city with nothing but a backpack, a bottle of water and a bottle of juice, and barely a penny to his name. He walked for miles trying to hitchhike lifts to Sao Paulo, one of the major cities in Brazil. The reason he was trying to get there was to get into one of the team's academies. On his travels, it seemed that luck didn't go his way that often, and he slept on the concrete on the coldest nights of the year, until one night a lady tapped him on the shoulder and let him stay in her hostel. If she didn't do that, there's a good chance that he would have frozen to death. That was a moment of kindness that Douglas, Endrick's father, has never ever forgotten. His plan of becoming a player and earning money through football didn't go to plan in the end. But football would always end up being a part of a journey and a big part of this story. Douglas met Endrick's mum when he was a cleaner at a national Brazilian football stadium in Brasilia, and eventually they would have a baby called Endrick, who would be born on the 21st of July in 2006. And as he would grow up and he could stand and walk and extend his legs, he did what many kids did, but pretty much what all kids did in Brazil, and of course that would be to play football. He would play football with his father, he would play football with his family, and he would play football on the streets with all of the kids. Endrick was special. He had this invisible glow when he had the ball at his feet, and even when he was just a tiny kid, people started to call him the illusionist, as he made stuff look unreal when he had the ball at his feet. Endrick clearly had a talent, but although he was talented, he was growing up in a country where not only did lots of other kids have a talent, but hundreds of thousands of them were knocking on the doors of scouts and clubs and teams for opportunities. However, the situation at home for Endrick was a tough one. In the place and area which he and his family were living and growing up in, there were very, very little jobs. And when there are no jobs, there is no money. Endrick and his family grew up in a place that was rich in love, but extremely poor when it came to money. Endrick is aware of what his family have done for him over the years, the sacrifices which they have made. His parents often didn't eat and they skipped meals most days just to make sure that he could eat and turn out to be a fit and strong young man. His parents would do everything and anything they could in terms of work and jobs to put food on the table, and they committed everything they possibly could to Endrick and his siblings. Endrick appreciated it, and he appreciates it even more now. And I'm sure there are people in your life who go out of their way to make sure that you are well and you are happy and that you don't go without. So make sure you let them know how much you appreciate them as well. So, back to Endrick. There he was, growing up playing football, getting better and better all the time. And then, at around 10 years old, Endrick was spotted and picked up by Sao Paulo FC, a big team which could leapfrog him into the limelight without a doubt. The coaches were seriously impressed with this kid. He did everything right, but the thing with him is he made everything look easy. However, for Endrick and his family to relocate to Sao Paulo from where they were, Endrick's dad asked if they would be able to give him a job doing anything at the club so he could earn some money and live close by, and that meant that Endrick could properly join the club and develop as an academy player. The club declined this offer, and Endrick's time ended at Sao Paulo before it even really got started. And it's said that a few years later, the club ordered an investigation in how this was allowed to happen. The club is worth millions. Endrick was one of the best players they'd ever set their eyes on, and they couldn't provide a small job to the father to help get the kids signed up. To say they are kicking themselves now is a bit of an understatement. When you are as talented as Endrick, and in a sport like football, it wouldn't be long before someone else would snap him up. And the club that did that at age 10 years old was Palmeiras, a giant club in the country that has seen so many top Brazilian players come through over the years. Palmeiras didn't only sign the young star, but they helped his family. They helped his family with a house, and they provided his father with a job. They treated them very well, and they looked after them in a big way, something which the family have never forgotten. While playing in Palmeiras as a youth academy player, it's reported that Endrick scored a whopping rate of 170 goals in 176 matches. Barely a moment went by when he wasn't doing something magical with the ball at his feet. He dominated at his age group and at the age groups above him as well. When he was 16 years old, he played in a famous tournament in Brazil, which is for the under-20s footballers across the country, where the best youth teams across the country play each other. Endrick stood out beyond belief, scoring a goal in nearly every single game he played in. He also scored some absolute worldies, which some of the coaches and those in attendance are still speaking about today. And not only did he go on to win the trophy with Palmeiras, but he was voted as the best player of the tournament by quite some stretch. Brazil had a potential Pele on their hands. Not long after this, Endrick would make his professional senior debut at the club, and he was just 16 years old. He lit up the pitch. He was tall, stocky, and full of ambition. The Palmeiras ultras absolutely loved him, and even more when he eventually scored in another game, breaking the record for the youngest Palmeiras goalscorer of all time. The team had a sensational talent on the books, but not only did they know it, the rest of the world was starting to work it out. As you can expect, some big teams with lots and lots of money came sniffing. They all wanted the Brazilian superstar in their team. Chelsea were one of the teams who nearly signed him. They flew Endrick and his family over to London, They took him to an Arsenal-Chelsea match. They showed him the multi-million-pound house that he and his family could be living in. They showed him the church that he could go and worship in, which is one of his big things in life, and it was pretty much a done deal. Everything was verbally agreed, but not signed. Then, it all fell through, and it didn't happen. In the end, Liverpool, Barcelona, PSG and all the other giant clubs had a go at getting the youngster. But as almost always in this type of scenario, the team who came out on top was of course Real Madrid. It's not officially announced what the fee was, but experts believe that it was somewhere around 70 million euros, which made Endrick one of the most expensive players to ever leave Brazilian football. Endrick, due to FIFA's rules on young players, couldn't actually leave to join Real Madrid until he was 18 years old. Endrick turned 18 years old last July in 2024, and he came on as a substitute in that crisp white Real Madrid kit and scored the third goal in a game which ended 3-0. And in that game he made history as the youngest foreign player to ever score for the club in La Liga history. Madrid fans couldn't believe their eyes. Endrick is clearly already doing some wonderful things at Real Madrid, and it's safe to say he is settling in nicely, and I'm sure he will continue to do some terrific things as time goes by. At 18 years old, he's already broken multiple records, from financial ones to goal scoring ones and lots more in between. But Endrick is more than just about the football. He's a young lad with a very wise head on his shoulders and a very grateful brain in his head. He knows how lucky he has been to have the parents that he has. He knows what they went through to get him where he is today. He knows how hard the struggle was for them. And not only has he already been able to pay them back so they already don't have to worry about money again, but he has set himself some goals in life to help as many people as he can and give people in the same situation that he and his family was the opportunities which they deserve. So then, this story didn't start with Endrick. It started before Endrick was even born. And although his father may not have made it as a footballer himself, it was his father's and mother's hard work, their never giving up attitude, mixed with a bit of fate and plenty of determination, that meant football would change their lives forever. And I think it doesn't matter whether you're listening to this as a parent or a child, it's a good reminder to keep going and never give up on whatever it is that you are pursuing. So remember, if you know somebody who loves football just as much as you do, then please tell them about Football for Kids. And whether you're playing football soon, watching it on the telly or pitch side, I hope that you enjoy the game. See you next time.
This podcast is part of the Sports Social Podcast Network.